The last time I appeared on Saturday Night Live was in 1981. America laughed at Gilda Radner, but her husband carried a tale for decades behind her grin. She had a comfortable upbringing, rose to fame on Saturday Night Live, and appeared to have the ideal love story when she married Gene Wilder. However, Jean eventually acknowledged that the reality was far more sinister after her passing. There were hospital nights that permanently altered him, months of incorrect responses, guilt over how their romance started, and missed warnings. When something terrible was developing inside Gilda, why did the doctors keep telling her that it was stress, music? And what music did Gan reveal years later that is still difficult to believe? From a distance, Gilda Radner's early years appeared lovely. She was raised as the only daughter of a rich Jewish family after being born on June 28, 1946, at Sinai Hospital in Detroit. The family resided in Palmer Woods, one of the most affluent areas in the city, and her father, Herman Erner, owned the Seville Hotel on Woodward Avenue. On the surface, it appeared to be the kind of easy upbringing that people envision. However, Gilda was discovering something quite different within that solace. Money might create music, the picture of a happy family, furnish a house, and cover trip expenses. However, it was unable to provide her with the consistent emotional security she required. She would still rank childhood as one of the most difficult periods of her life years later. More than the environment she lived in, her father formed her. He influenced how she perceived herself. Herman was more than just a prosperous businessman. He was Gilda's first audience. When she was younger, he would take her to live performances in downtown Detroit and occasionally to Broadway in New York on business travels. She discovered a whole new universe on her excursions. Herman encouraged her to do voices and short sketches, music, at the dinner table at home. That answer was important. She learned early on that laughter could be a source of warmth, attention, and praise. The pattern was evident by the time she was around 10 years old. She performed in front of her father. His laughing gradually became associated with her self-esteem. Then something uncontrollable happened in her life. Gilda's father had a brain tumor in 1960 when she was only 14 years old. What came next was terrible and slow. She saw the once vibrant man lose his ability to speak, his vitality, and some aspects of his personality, music. In front of her, the person who had given her encouragement and attention was abruptly disappearing. That year, he passed away, and she never fully recovered from the loss. It was the memory of powerlessness as much as pain. It was the horror of being imprisoned in a body that has stopped responding to your commands. She would relate the incident to her father as she battled ovarian cancer in the 1980s, as though that old anxiety had reappeared in a different form. She had already begun to be shaped by another fight prior to that tragedy. Gilda was made fun of for her weight when she was a student at University Lyot School in Detroit. She started to feel ashamed at a young age, and the taunting became a regular part of her life. In order to endure the situation, she turned suffering into a joke and learned to talk about herself before anyone else could. When her mother took her to the doctor when she was 10 years old, the grown-ups around her turned it into a medical music project, rather than relieving the stress related to food and body image. They gave her diet tablets. She developed a long-lasting and harmful relationship with food as a result of that choice. Gilda later said that starting at the age of 9, she experienced every type of eating disorder. She would even end herself in the hospital as an adult due to bulimia. What the general public perceived as self-deprecating comedy actually stemmed from something far more depressing. The way she dealt with that pain was shaped by one individual. She received a rule from her governess, Elizabeth Gillies, also known as DeBee Music, that she carried with her for many years. Gilda was protected by DeBee's counsel to turn it into a joke. Laugh before they do, when other kids made fun of her weight. It allowed her to deflect a hit before it struck. She eventually incorporated that behavior into her comedic instinct. These early moments of dread gave rise to the brazen self-mockery that subsequently made audiences laugh. The female behind the little joke was attempting to avoid getting wounded. Her early years, however, never found a regular rhythm. Gilda's mother frequently brought her daughter to Florida for months at a stretch because she detested Detroit winters so much. This did not occur once. Music! It kept happening. Gilda missed up to 4 months of school in certain years. A break like that made an impression. She was unable to complete a school year alongside everyone else. It was more difficult to form friendships. She was perceived by teachers as someone who was passing through. When she returned, classmates had to make adjustments after continuing without her. She therefore frequently felt uncomfortable even though she was living comfortably. She learned to win people over quickly as a result of her frequent uprooting, because it was never certain that she would stay in touch. Later on, her work would reflect that same need, particularly in the live energy she gave to audiences who had to fall in love with her immediately. That combination of humor, music, sensitivity, insecurity, and a desire for connection was already firmly established by the time she completed her education in Detroit. In June 1964, at 18, she graduated from the Liat School. People around her observed that she was amusing, but they also saw something softer in her. She showed genuine sensitivity, particularly for kids with special needs. She therefore had no intention of becoming a television celebrity when she enrolled at the University of Michigan that autumn. Her goal was to work as a teacher for kids with developmental disabilities. Her future appeared generous and pragmatic at that time. The stage had not yet completely taken over, but it was there in the backdrop. Nevertheless, something started to draw her in a different path as soon as she got to Ann Arbor. Perhaps as a continuation of her pre-existing hobbies, she began taking music, acting, and improvisation classes. Then the theater continued to expand. She spent more time in rehearsals. Her involvement in student productions grew. She found a space where all the parts of her personality could come together through sketch evenings and workshops. Music. Her timing was exceptional. Her music classmates and professors started to notice that she had a unique talent for performance. The path she had selected on paper gradually gave way to the one that felt alive every time she entered a setting as the years went by. Although it took time for that shift to occur, by 1969 it was unavoidable. Gilda was almost done with her 5 years at Michigan. Her graduation was about 1 semester away. After 5 seasons and over 100 episodes, Gilda departed Saturday Night Live in May 1980. From the outside, it appeared to be a logical step toward film and artistic independence. However, living away from the show presented its own challenges. She had been struggling with eating and body issues for years, and the pressure of celebrity had not made them any better. Later on, she wrote candidly about extreme weight fluctuations, crash diets, dexedrine, binge eating, and bulimia. She had gained a great deal of attention from the plaudits, but the personal conflicts that music had sparked in her early years had not subsided. As she attempted to establish a cinematic career in the early 1980s, the tension persisted. She didn't get what television had right away from the movies. In 1980, she made an appearance in First Family. In 1982, she met Gene Wilder while creating Hanky Panky music. Then, in 1984, she made another appearance alongside Wilder in The Woman in Red. Although she remained visible in those roles, the movies did not put her at the center as SNL had. The show no longer revolved around her. She now had to locate space, music, within other people's endeavors. That change was difficult, particularly for someone whose strong personal comic universe and complete dedication produced their best work. Her private life was also evolving. She wed G.E. on March 26, 1980. Smith, the guitarist associated with both the SNL band and her Broadway run. Both the marriage and its dissolution happened swiftly. It ended in 1982. Friends recalled her desire for assurance as well as the stress of job and scheduling. Later on, Gilda realized that some of the emotional turmoil in her relationships mirrored the same instability that drove her humor. The intensity persisted even in real life. Both Gilda Radner and Gene Wilder were married when they first met on the Hanky Panky set in 1981 and 1982. On paper, it ought to have been a difficult, cautious encounter between two individuals who had completed their entire lives. Gilda was married to SNL guitarist G.E. when she was around 35. Music. Smith. At the age of 48, Gene had already gone through 2 divorces and was in his 3rd marriage. However, from the beginning, there was something about their bond that seemed greater than the circumstances. Gilda broke down in tears on one of their first nights of filming along the Hudson River in 1982 and told Gene, as though she had already seen the conclusion, "I am certain that I will wed you."